Okay.
So today is March 23rd, 7 PM. And we'll call the meeting of the Board of Assessment Appeals
Can I ask you a
to
question?
order.
Oh, we're not gonna video it from video.
No, it's just recording.
Okay.
You know, we've got the flag and tip of the
Yeah,
flag.
I took a bath, shaved.
And present are all three members of the Board of Assessment Appeals. And the only item on the agenda is to make a decision. Well, no, that's not true. We have two items. The first item is to make a decision on the two appeals of 25 Carter Road and 28 Carter Road by iWatch. Okay. So we heard their presentation. And yeah, they've given us their version of what they want us to hear. And you know, they're looking at section 1281(7). And there are certain things that people have to do. You know, this is housing shall not include any real property used for temporary housing belonging to or held in trust for any corporation organized exclusively for charitable purposes and exempt from taxation for federal income tax purposes. The primary use of which property is one or more of the following: an orphanage, a drug or alcohol treatment or rehabilitation facility, housing for persons who are homeless, persons with a mental health disorder, persons with intellectual or physical disability, or victims of domestic violence, housing for ex-offenders or for individuals participating in a program. None of those.
But that whole paragraph doesn't apply, because
Yeah, it does.
are they getting subsidies? That's only for, it's only, that says if you get a subsidy, or if you're providing affordable housing, you don't get any exemption unless you're one of those, but it doesn't apply. They're not getting the subsidy and they're not providing affordable housing. So those exceptions.
They're trying to provide affordable housing.
They don't consider that, the court doesn't consider it affordable housing.
Well, right here, exclusive use for charitable purposes.
So what was the purpose in that?
It is analyzing whether or not the real property at issue, which are these two residential houses, is used exclusively for carrying out the charitable purposes of the corporate entity, which is a facility for rehabilitation. And they said that those people aren't even allowed back in Iowa. They have graduated. They're out of the
Well, I didn't hear
program.
that. I just heard that I didn't hear they weren't allowed. I heard that they were on to the next phase, but that there may still be some life skills things going on.
Maybe there are, but that's not. Now, if there is, they didn't tell us, and they were very evasive about what actually was the situation with any overview in terms of a resident there. They did say that they were not participating in any of the rehabilitation or any of the services at the facility. They had graduated.
That's not what I heard. I heard that they were done with the main drug rehab program, and this was kind of a life skills thing They even had a supervisor to help them with that. Is on to a life skills.
But that's not that's not the charitable purpose for which High Watch is registered. Was this, so here, when they looked at this, the exclusivity, what is exclusively for the charitable purpose. The trial court found that the center's property was not used exclusively for charitable
What was the
purpose.
purpose there?
These were people who were, it was like a, what was it way back? It was a skilled nursing home facility. Okay, so
who were the people that were staying in a residential place?
What happened was they weren't exclusively using it. They ended up having people, I mean, they got loans and stuff like that, and all of this. The lower courts had said, oh, it's not exclusive. This court said, in fact, those courts got it wrong. That would have given them tax exemption. But
it sounds a little different. It sounds like what they did is they had properties and they had people who were not patients or anything come in, rent the properties. and
no, these were all patients who were
moved from the hospital.
were part of, they were people who came. And so they said that, it was a nursing home, so they took people in.
Mhm.
Okay, but then they what got them was the exclusivity. And
Yeah, but it sounds like they have a different purpose there. They're like a
Right.
strictly medical, whereas the drug rehab program, most drug rehab programs, and I'm sure High Watch is too, have a strong element of life skills as part of your life is screwed up, that's why you're here, because of drugs. So we can help you get your life back together.
Sure.
And
so do it at the center. Do it at High
well,
Watch.
now you're changing the subject. The subject is that the purpose? And if that is the purpose, then there's an argument to be made that the people who are staying at High Watch, including these properties in question, which is High Watch, owned by High Watch, are continuing with the program of learning life skills, developing life skills, the original program. It's a
But it's
final
falling,
stage.
it's falling outside. So they are a alcohol rehabilitation facility,
Uh-huh.
providing treatment, providing
Life skills.
counseling,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other thing.
Exactly,
There.
counseling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they're going out and buying houses that by law can't be treated any differently as long as they're less than 6.
Unless
people
they're
in the
using the
house.
same use. Even this case you're quoting from what you said, if High Watch went out and bought 20 houses in Kent and did drug rehab there, they'd be exempt. It doesn't matter that they went out and bought them.
No.
That's irrelevant.
They're saying that it's not the exclusive use.
Yeah, if they did that for exclusive use in 20 places, those additional 20 places would have the right to be exempt from property taxes. So it's not a question of, did they buy something?
Why?
Because they have a charitable purpose.
Sober houses under the law cannot be treated
You're changing
any
the subject.
differently.
That's not what I'm talking about.
But that's what they're saying that
I'm
these
giving an
are.
example as to why this doesn't apply. And what I'm saying is, for example, if High Watch went out and bought 20 houses instead of 2, and each one of those, they did the same drug rehab program they're doing in their existing properties.
But they're not.
Those, give me a chance. Then those 20 houses would have a right to tax exemption. Just because it's a new place doesn't mean, oh, that's new, that's not allowed to be tax exempt. You have to treat the new place as if it were the same as,
No, you don't,
well, you have. That's part of the
because,
program.
because, and they said in our meeting,
Uh-huh.
they had graduated, these people, and they were not going back to, they could not use any of the services of High Watch.
That's
So
not
now
what I heard.
they're in a different
what I heard.
phase.
I heard that they were,
No,
they had a
they had
supervisor there to
graduated.
help them with life skills.
They said they had graduated from the program.
Well, I
So
heard,
now they're in a house, Gary.
yeah, they
Okay.
graduated from a part of the program, but they said they were
They
there.
don't have to go to get a change of use, because under the law, a sober house with 6 or less folks in it
Uh-huh.
can operate in a residential area and cannot be treated any differently than any other residential property.
Well,
So let me ask you, are you tax exempt?
no, why do you ask me that? Are you?
Everybody, so the tax exempt is not applicable to these houses.
Why is that? Well, I
Why are
heard, I
you
guess,
gonna- why
there's-
are you
okay,
gonna
so
treat them differently?
one difference that between your understanding from my understanding is that my understanding and what I heard them say is these people are still part of the High Watch program. They're out of the intensive drug rehab part, and now they're into something where we just try to set patterns with life skills with them, part of the counseling program, essentially. In fact, we even have a counselor there. He's kind of a supervisory guy that stays there, and somebody's there every day that anybody's there as part of the program. And they're only there for, I don't know what they say, 6 weeks.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Well,
But
it does
what-
matter because if they were there permanently, that would be an argument against it being a counseling program.
that would be an argument against the sober house.
Yeah, but they're not there permanently.
So you look at the law, and the law says a residential property used for a sober house is allowable, and you cannot treat it any differently than any other residential property.
Well, if I look at the law and I see something that's treated that's as a place that's there to develop life skills to mainstream people, they are tax exempt.
Well, no, they're
The
not.
very cases they gave us said that.
Those are the ones that they gave us.
Well,
Others
yeah,
didn't.
but the
So
court, the neutral court said.
this court, who said we've already used Isaiah in one instance,
Uh-huh.
and with this, no, because the exclusive use is compromised. And that's why
Compromise in what way?
Canaan's just rejected their.
Yeah, but we don't know the details of Canaan. We can't really say, well, they did it, so we can do it. We don't know. Factual
Well,
details.
I'm not, I've had long talks with Jen
Uh-huh.
and whatnot, okay?
Yeah,
There is plenty of case law that they can use to argue this. So I'm not willing to give them a tax exemption,
all right, well,
because once you do, now you said, oh, okay.
yeah, but that's like saying, we need the money. So let's just ignore for the time being anything about the rules and stuff like that. We need that money.
No,
I
I'm
need
not,
money from,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
My neighbor,
that,
I don't get money from him.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, to me, they didn't prove. And in fact, their statement said, they're no longer, these guys are no longer part of High Watch. So it doesn't really matter who owns the property, but the exclusive use for what High Watch was
Yeah.
created for is not happening
Hmm.
in that sober house.
That's the difference. That's the difference between you and me. But what you heard and what I heard that they were using that for counseling for life skills. As is Owens, whatever it's called. What's it called?
Also,
Wilson's?
I don't know, were you on the board when we went up there and they told us that the property across the street was being used for meetings and there was absolutely no furniture in the building?
Yeah, well, that's a different question. If they're lying and we have evidence that they're lying about their use, that's a completely different question. We don't have any evidence that they're lying about their use.
Well,
They
anyhow,
suspect it.
I
Can't really address the case if you don't give it to me ahead of time. I can't.
no,
really
I
read
just
that
got it
statement.
last night. And
Yeah.
so they went through the whole thing and they said, so here they said that, and they're talking, they talked about in Isaiah, how they had found in that case, but in this one, they said the exclusive use requirement must be strictly construed so as to require a charitable organization seeking the benefit of a property tax exemption to use its property in such a manner that its activities are entirely dedicated to serving its stated charitable
Yeah.
purpose.
Okay,
And
so,
that's not, if they're
So-
saying those folks
so I understand that.
can't use the facilities at High Watch,
That doesn't mean they're not part of the mission I watch.
it's a different, it's.
I can't go back to
It's
first
different.
grade if I'm in third grade, but that doesn't mean I'm not there for education.
It's different, and there's too much gray area here to say, oh, we're just gonna let them do it.
Well, if you want to use this case as something, then give me a copy, let me look at it, and then we have to meet again, because I don't have time to look
Well-
at it, and I can't just rely on,
Then don't, but
yeah.
I heard exactly what Teresa heard.
uh-huh.
Those people have graduated, they are not allowed back in unless it's a public AA meeting.
So in your opinion, what High Watch said was, these people are just hanging out. They're not, they don't have anything to do.
They're using those,
Why are they there?
basically, they're the workers in town, at Wilson's and this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Some of them have registered cars in the town of Kent, some of
So,
them,
so you think that High Watch is saying, listen, they're just employees, we're housing our employees there, that's okay. I don't think that's what they said. I think they said, no, they're there as part of a extended, final stage of their treatment of life skill counseling to get them in the patterns of living and managing a budget. I think they even mentioned something about managing a budget personally or something. They charge them rent, that's not even market rent, just to get them used to the idea of paying bills responsibly. So it was part of a life skills counseling program.
Yeah, but it's still a sober house. And a sober
What's a
house,
sober house?
what's a sober house?
I don't know what that is.
Where people are there to continue their rehabilitation. That's why they can go into a residential neighborhood under that law that says they can exist in a residential area.
My point exactly, they're there to continue their rehabilitation.
And a sober house, by definition in Connecticut, cannot be used any different, be treated any differently than any other residential property.
Actually, a sober house, by definition of the court's cases they gave us, qualifies as treatment if certain things are done, a counseling program of some sort, rather than just a flop house, and does qualify for the exemption, according to the court's cases they gave us.
But the rehabilitation that High Watch provided, they said those people were not privy to.
They said they weren't privy to the
They said they were
intensive
graduates.
anti-drug.
They had graduated. They were not allowed back on the campus.
They graduated to another phase of the program, life skills.
I don't buy that that's what is, the charitable purpose of what High Watch was set up to do.
Life
So
skills is not part of rehabilitation. I mean, what is rehab? If not,
What's life?
how does rehab not include life skills?
We're not gonna, solve this.
Well, to me, that's rehab and life skills are, the same thing, an important part of each other.
They had,
Can I take a look at the case that you just showed me? Is that it there?
that's it. The,
You know the name of the case?
Wyndham versus,
Jones.
yeah. The other thing is that, a lot of what they gave us was about their extended need for the, detoxification program.
Yeah, that was superfluous, even if you give them the strongest argument.
Not really, because they also say that there are conditions, and so, the conditions are that the applicant shall provide 200 resident days or an equivalent amount of funds to individuals who are uninsured, underinsured, or covered by Medicaid. And according to folks who have been going up there, they haven't provided that.
They haven't provided, what, 200 days of treatment?
They have to give, in order to do this detox, they have to have,
So in order to do their basic
fulfill
mission.
these things.
Uh-huh.
So right now,
Well, so we have, wait a minute, they didn't provide a statement, documentation that they're not doing their mission, right? That's not what you just said, they're not doing their mission? I don't quite understand what you just said. It seems to me that.
so
all-
that I mean, a lot of this was superfluous, but I agree. And all these letters about being, residents or whatever of Carter Road and whatnot,
Yeah,
that was their push to get the detox center, and then they have certain things that are going on. So they're undergoing a huge building process on the campus.
yeah,
They have had plenty of opportunity to plan a small building or two
Yeah.
there.
but that's
They
not really
didn't.
relevant, is it? Because,
And that would have allowed people to
so is there
step off
a rule?
and
somewhere?
still
Yeah.
be part of the rehabilitation
On the same
facility.
property, you mean, on the same
Okay.
real estate? If they, so if
But
you have,
you tell people you've graduated,
uh,
go over there and continue your rehabilitation. You can't come back here. That's what they said to us. That's no longer the charitable purpose for which they were, not exclusively.
so you think whatever they say that person, the part of the program that person cannot use, somehow that in itself is clearly the 100% of the charitable purpose.
It's not the 100% charitable purpose. They're, so if you said they've graduated from our program, they don't, okay, then they're on their own. They can go wherever they want as far as going to a sober house or whatever. a sober house is what these two houses are. And they are not to be treated any differently in a residential neighborhood as any other residential property.
So what's the logic of that? Why would a sober house not be treated any different?
Because
why
you
should it
can't,
not be
you can't, as a community, say you can't have a sober use in a residential
Well,
neighborhood.
that's different. Sober use and sober house, two different things. Sober use could be a church. Sober use could be an AA meeting. But
No,
they're not just talking.
they're talking about a sober house.
Yeah, but a sober house doesn't mean anything in itself.
It
You gotta
means
define it.
It means in a residential area,
Uh-huh.
that is a permitted use. You do not need to apply for a change of use. If you were gonna start having
But
church meetings at
that's
your
zoning.
house, you'd have to go to zoning.
Yeah, but
It is a
this
zoning
in
issue.
itself says that these rights, it doesn't say that you have to have the right zoning in order to get the exemption. It doesn't have this. In fact, it pretty much says the opposite. It says you don't need it. Regardless of zoning, here's your exemption
For what?
for
Federal
charitable
income
use.
tax.
Charitable use. No, property tax. Those two cases very clearly said, if you meet these conditions.
Well, here's
you
one
get a
where
property tax
after Isaiah, court said no.
Okay, so
So-
here's what I propose. I'd like to read that. It's interesting. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that tells me I'm wrong. I can't read it now. So either let's meet again or whatever you think is proper. If you want to take
But-
this into account, then you need to give us time to read it.
The other thing is the zoning, okay? So you can't differentiate between the different uses in a residential zone, and all the residential properties need to be treated equally.
Well,
And
the cases they presented
under that,
say the opposite.
under that,
The cases they presented say the opposite. They said that regardless of zoning, doesn't matter what you're zoned as, if you have these particular uses, you get a property tax exemption. Regardless of zoning,
no,
that's what they said. They don't say anything about, okay, but if you're not zoned that way, then you don't. get the
no,
exemption. They say you
under
get the
the-
exemption.
the law says that you can't treat a sober house differently than any other residential property in any way.
For a property tax exemption. In other words, does the law say specifically a house for where life skills are being treated? It doesn't really, sober house means nothing here, I don't think, because anybody could use that word, and that could mean anything
Well,
from
that's what
a group house
you know,
where people are not drinking to a residential treatment facility. It could be anything in between that, so you need to be more specific, I think, in defining it in order to answer the question about whether it's tax exempt, whether they are going toward.
basically, I'm saying that, from what they said in the
Yeah.
meeting, which was these were graduates of their program. And they were, were not using and were not allowed to use the facilities. Now you've got a different, and that's separate from the exclusive charitable purpose.
Mhm.
And that's the argument. And that's not fully proven. So Isaiah's one case. There's hundreds of cases that are referenced.
Yeah. but
So
you can
we
just
can
throw
go
it
on
out.
back and forth. I'm not willing. You can't go, and you said the other day, maybe it's a terrible law, maybe it should be changed. Let them fight it in court.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we say no.
But I don't
And then
think,
if they
I don't
think
think it's
it's-
honest to say no.
Why not? Because if they choose to spend probably 5 times more money on legal fees than the taxes that they would pay just for these two properties, that's their choice. But right now, to me, they didn't show me that they were fully following the exclusive use of High Watch, because they said those people were not even allowed back in.
What do you think, Therese?
I think when they received their exemption, that it was based on the property that they have right now on Carter Road, not based on this. So,
I thought they didn't receive an exemption. In fact, they were denied an exemption. They claimed an exemption. Right?
No, they've had their property, their campus,
Their main one, not
Their
these,
main
not the
campus.
ones in question.
no, their main one has
Yeah.
always been,
Yeah, that's been given an exemption to them.
yes.
Yeah,
Now, they bought across the way.
yeah.
And they came to us and they, I don't know if you were on the board yet. We went and we denied them because they said, oh, we're doing this, and this. Absolutely no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, but that's a different question, and if you think the same thing's happening here, we should go visit them, or we should have, I don't know how much time we have. But, and see if their claims are false. But I think right now we're operating under the assumption, okay, the claims are true, do they have a right? The claims of what they are doing are true, and if you assume they're true, do they have the right to exemption?
well, actually, I was talking about their exemption, which is the federal exemption.
Oh, the
That
federal
they-
tax exemption, yeah.
Exactly. So when they applied for their federal exemption, their federal exemption was based on the property that they have, whatever address it is that they have.
62.
Okay,
Yeah.
62. So that's what,
Yeah,
we don't know that the federal government would include these two
yeah.
or future.
Although they don't have to have a federal exemption in order to have a property tax exemption, according to the law.
No,
only
they
need
don't. So then you go back to looking at
The use,
the use.
Yeah.
And so
the use is the whole thing.
you can't, if you have that use going on, you're not to treat that property any differently than any other property in a residential.
What use? Yeah, the use that you're defining it as, right?
Yeah, that's
And
what
that's our,
they're
that's
telling
our
us
whole
it is.
difference. Well, I heard them say that they had life skills training going on. And.
A lot of these boys, you know, but they evaded a lot of the questions when I asked about, you know, tell us about the counseling or the person in charge, and that was very vague.
Well, we didn't ask
So,
very many.
without-
Yeah,
You know, there's too many gray areas.
all right, well. I don't know if
So-
we're gonna convince each other, you wanna just take a vote? Call it a night, or how you wanna do it? We're not gonna agree on everything.
No, we're not gonna necessarily agree on everything, and this is, you know, it is incredibly complex. It really is. I mean, you look at their percent of what they give towards this the 2,500,000
Mhm.
every year. That was straight across the board for
So what?
charity care.
Yeah,
Okay. 2 million of 2018, 20 million was their
yeah,
gross revenue. Okay, 2019, 24 million,
24 million is a gross revenue,
and this has stayed the same.
yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, but my read is, if they have a charitable purpose, that's the beginning and end of the test. And actually, you know, even I don't understand how the federal government calls some people, some organizations, nonprofit that make huge amounts of money and have millionaires for direction.
well,
But I don't set those rules either. So, and in this particular case, they don't need a federal tax exemption, I don't think, because.
so
the whole
here we
question,
go.
if they have a charitable purpose.
Salaries and wages
Yeah,
have gone up in 4 years. Almost $4 million.
But it-
That was another thing that
Maybe
was
they've
brought
hired
up,
a bunch more.
that, you know, whether or not
The reasonable pay.
reasonable compensation. That to me, when
Well-
you're keeping your charity care level and you're paying, putting into your own pocket, that kind of.
Can I see
increase.
that?
Behave like a charity.
Yeah, so it's going up like 45% in 4 years. And you know, it doesn't say here like the number of patients or anything like that, does it? Or is it some kind of thing here that tells you like their number of patients or how much they're spending on patients?
No,
It's kind of hard to tell. Maybe they double the staff and increase their total pay only by 50%.
they had,
Oh, here's inpatient discharges. Let's see. FY projected, actual 2018, they discharged 898 patients. In
so they're actually estimating the value of the property.
If they're $1 more, we could have not taken the case, right? They said it's 500,000.
No, they said 500,000. I
The
thought the other one was.
rule is if it's over 500,000.
No, I mean, we've always taken it, even if we've. Patty is sort of, used to say, now this one probably should end up in court. The way to do that is to deny. Where did, I'm missing one of the. I am missing.
So they say they take in 20 million and 33 million and they use 30 million for. $25 million in expenses. Yeah.
So, you know, the specific purpose. I mean, it is. Pulling straws, sort of. But if they're saying that these people can't use the facilities,
Well,
then, you know, and that's what they said.
that's not what I heard. I heard them say they can't use the part of the facility that people arrive at. And the main drug rehab part, not the entire drug rehab part, the main one. Now they're in the life skills phase of the rehab program, so they're not going back to group therapy, or they're not going back to, I don't know what, I don't even know what drug rehab does, but whatever the more intensive part of the program is. But they, you know, they did go into why they charge rent. Well, we're teaching life skills because, you know, learning how to manage a budget. And, you know, people are staying there just a few weeks.
So they were looking at some of these things where they looked at different cases, case laws and stuff like that.
Who's they? This
The
case?
judges here, and they
Yeah.
said, okay, in this case, for a school, campus, playground, school buildings were entitled to an exemption. but the portion that was faculty cottages or used as a garden was
Mhm.
properly taxable.
But that's just
So-
different.
Because
Because,
it's different from, it's not,
no,
they weren't
that's not
used-
comparable to this case. is
sure
what
it
I'm
is,
saying.
because it's the specific purpose of the plaintiff.
Yeah,
And the
but,
drug rehabilitation facility is the specific charitable use.
Yeah.
And
But
they're
there's-
saying these people can't use the facility.
but in that case, the
So
part you just brought up, what they're saying is, listen, so you house your employees. You can't call that part of the admission. This is not housing the employees.
no, this was just simply, this was
students
simply
and the-
saying that in looking at property, if certain property is the exclusive use of the purpose for which the entity was created for,
Uh-huh.
is open to everybody, that's fine. This separate property here, those people there are not allowed back on to,
Well, you're talking about now you're going back to the High Watch case.
yeah,
I was talking
So
about that case.
this case, same thing, it's the
Well, it's good.
not used for the
Major difference.
specific purposes.
Major difference. It's a different type of use.
Centers long-term chronic care are offered in a portion of the facility.
You're talking about a
Physical
school.
da-da-da-da-da.
You're talking about a school employees and students. That's what I was talking about.
This is a covenant, convent, I mean, so they're different things. And the center cannot avail, this was to achieve a tax exemption for its otherwise charitable purposes. It may be that there are charitable purposes going on there, but it's
That's the
outside of
exclusive,
the
yeah.
exclusive
Yeah.
charitable purpose for High Watch, which is
Well,
that facility.
you could say, so sleeping and being overnight is not necessarily in and of itself outside the charitable purpose, because even people in the intensive part of High Watch are sleeping and staying there overnight.
No,
So
I'm
it's not a
talking
question,
about
are they just sleeping?
sleeping or not. I'm talking about those people cannot avail themselves of the facility. And the facility is what High Watch has the tax exemption for. Now they're trying to use a different law to go out and say, oh, well, we're just gonna extend that to tell people da 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 da. So then go to land use. And land use says
Well,
a residential property that is used as a sober facility,
yeah, for
sober
zoning,
house,
For zoning,
cannot be treated any differently
for zoning.
than any other, and as far as I know, everybody else gets taxed.
So local zoning board doesn't trump state law, state tax exemption law.
Let them figure that out in court.
I mean, why would it? It's a local law, the state, I mean, and the cases they gave show that. I don't think that makes any sense.
State, it's not local law, it's state.
No, that's a local zone. You know, the state doesn't come here and tell you, okay, you can call.
No,
that a
the
school,
state
that's not a
has told, it's a state,
Court,
the state has said that you cannot discriminate in your zoning against
right,
sober
right, as
living. So
Right.
they must be treated the same as every other,
far as zoning goes, correct,
and,
which is a
That's-
different world than property tax exemption.
well, it's a world that people are looking at, and the courts are looking at. And.
I mean, the
and they're
cases
looking
they
at
gave
exclusive
very
use.
clearly said zoning doesn't apply. They said, you get this, period. They didn't say you get this unless the zoning's different. You
Well,
wanna,
I mean,
are we getting
we,
anywhere?
Gary, we could go back and we could find 400 more cases to look at, and we drive ourselves totally crazy.
Yeah, it's a kind of a paradoxical board in a way, because people are gonna bring things as if they're coming to a court, and we're not a court. Yeah, they're gonna bring cases and try to argue that this case applies.
Well, what over the years, whether it's this, that, or the other thing, people are you know, tell us their version of the truth,
Well,
and things get omitted.
yeah, and if we think that they're lying or something, we need evidence. I don't have evidence of that.
They have to provide clear evidence that they're not. And they didn't, you know, I'm
I don't think
I'm
it's-
not willing to,
they're innocent until proven guilty. If they state something and we can't say we have evidence otherwise, or we don't say, okay, well, we need to go there and see it because for whatever reason or no reason, that's one thing. But if we don't say, okay, we have to go there and see it, we have to have evidence that we're the ones who have to have evidence that they're lying. They're not the ones that have to show that they're not lying. You know, it'd be good for them, be in their interest to provide evidence.
they didn't clearly give us facts that would take the gray area out of my head. So, you know, and some of the things, the statements they made said that these people can no longer use the facility. And that's, to me, the key thing,
Yeah,
because that's the charitable, you know,
I guess you heard it a little
the
different.
main thing. So, I mean, granted,
Too bad that we can't have him here and ask him the question again. But
no,
that's-
they would, you know, dance and do whatever they want to do,
Well, if you want to hear it again, you can just go to the,
recording.
yeah.
For
And
the
listen to it
90-minute
all over.
recording.
But, so we have two options. We take a vote tonight. And, or, you know, you can, I don't think that reading more stuff will necessarily change anyone's mind. And I think that when you look at the history of the denials of their going through the system, and I know, you know, we can't have the assessors here to testify, but they have said that they were not satisfied.
Yeah, but I talked to, what's her name, Jen? And she said one of the reasons that she spent most of her time explaining to me that if they had a charitable purpose and that was qualified as tax exempt, they would nonetheless not be eligible for a tax exemption if they were not zoned properly. I think that's not true. For everything I see, that's not true. And the opposite is true.
What do you mean zoned properly?
If they were zoned residential or zoned for some for-profit use. And
They're-
they had, even if they had legitimate, even if they had a legitimate, you know, even if they had something that arguably was a charitable purpose, they wouldn't be eligible for a property tax exemption.
No, because under zoning regulations that allow that use, which they're trying to claim makes them tax exempt. But the zoning
wait, that's not a
regulations
sentence.
say that they can't be treated any different.
For zoning purposes, right? Listen, we're not talking about zoning.
So that would be for
From what I could tell,
pay the tax.
if they, that's actually not true. They could have a zoning that's inconsistent with the charitable use. And if a court found they had a charitable use, they'd be eligible for a property tax exemption in spite of the zoning.
You look at the faculty housing, Kent School. We denied that.
A court found in our favor, right?
Kent never came back because we basically, the
Yeah.
courts have said, you know, they're not on the main campus. Granted, there's, you know,
Well, I
there are
mean,
teachers and things like
Yeah.
that, but it's not 100% exclusive use for the charitable purpose of the organization.
mhm,
And the organization is a full-blown rehabilitation facility.
Yeah.
And they said to us that those folks are, you know, so to me, it doesn't matter whether or not Highwatch owned it or whether
no.
someone else owned it. It's
neither
a
was-
residential, zoned residential, and can't be treated any differently than any other residential property. So with that, pay your taxes.
Huh. Yeah, that's a second difference I have with you. My interpretation from reading what we've read is the exact opposite. Zoning does not trump a state law that gives them a property tax exemption. You know, if they're eligible for property tax, if the zoning is irrelevant.
It's there. You know, they're not on the main campus.
Yeah.
There are things where, you know, there are different
Well,
precedents, so.
our total difference, let me just sum it up before we finish, is that you think that what they're doing is not rehab.
No, I didn't say that.
All right,
I said they're
because rehabs
not,
are charitable
that
purpose.
the exclusive use of the
Yeah,
corporation of High Watch is not, these people are not afforded 100% exclusive charity, you know, because they have been
well, exclusive doesn't mean
graduated from the
100%.
program. They cannot use the facilities up there,
Yeah.
according to what they said.
I think you're
So,
interpreting exclusive different than I would. I would use
well,
exclusive.
and that's
meaning-
what this is
something.
all about,
Yeah.
use of the
Well,
word exclusive.
I can't take that into account. This, I would say if their rehab program involves, I don't know, some kind of medical treatment for getting off drugs, and then involves some kind of group talk therapy, and also involved individual counseling with counselors about life skills and managing your life off drugs. And they, first of all, they're probably not doing all three of those at once at any point in the program. They're probably going through a cycle of first doing one, then the other, or they could be. And as long as they're doing one of those three things that are all drug rehab in an arguable way, that's within their use, and that's their charitable purpose. So if they're doing medical detox, that's part of their mission. If they're doing group therapy, that's part of their mission. If they're doing life skills, that's exclusively part of their mission, not outside of their mission. So it's part of their exclusive use, not outside of their mission. And that's what they're doing with this house, life skills. I mean, but are we repeating ourselves?
Mhm.
Should we stop?
I don't understand.
I feel like we're going around in circles. Why don't we just take a vote and move on?
All right, so,
Oh, but can I ask you one thing?
what?
Did you say there's a second issue? The second thing, you started out by saying we're here just for one thing, and then you said, oh, no, it's two things.
Yeah, the second is confirming our September date.
Oh, okay, why don't we get through this first?
Oh,
That's an easy one.
Yeah, that's what we're probably not arguing about that.
I don't know what's under this chair, but my God,
Noisy?
yes.
okay, so, question is, are we going to grant the appeal of High Watch for 25 Carter Road and 48 Carter Road? All in favor of granting the appeal, signify by saying aye.
Oh, aye. Sorry.
Gee, I was
What about
wondering.
you? Negative, okay, now you gotta say opposed?
Opposed.
I vote for denial.
I also vote for denial.
Okay, so 2 to
So
1.
that it's, you know, it will be what it will be.
Okay.
And, you know,
Let's
I
move
think
on.
we'll find out.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know, I mean, we all have to say what we think and.
Oh, I
do what
know.
we
And,
believe.
you know,
You know, just
I mean,
sometimes.
it is probably more complicated than even our rudimentary discussion here.
Could be,
I'm sure it's more complicated.
yeah.
And a lot of it will get into a variety of other things. Like these cases are looking at, you know, money and this, that, and the other thing, and who gets paid what,
Yeah.
you know, so the lawyers would go into way, way more detail if it comes to that. I think High Watch is crazy.
Because
to
they're not
not
gonna make
pay-
it, but they're probably thinking about 20 years of taxes.
I doubt it, not if they, if at the rate they're going with their gross income,
I mean,
this is not even a
Taking it-
blip.
but taking it to court would only make sense if you're thinking about saving taxes for 20 years. Saving taxes for 1 year is kind of a fraction of what their legal costs would be, I guess.
Yeah. So item number 2 was gonna be just verifying our September date.
Did we choose one tentatively yet?
And
This is for cars.
cars. What happened to my calendar? There it is.
What's the range of dates that are possible, that are within the rule?
We had down the 17th, which was a Saturday at 4 p.m.
Okay. That good?
Yeah, 4 PM is good for me.
Yeah, 4 p.m. So we'll just verify that with the town clerk that they've got it on the calendar. So if that's good, that's the second item.
And you'll
Wow,
like get in
that
touch
was
with
fast.
us, so like a week at a time or something with the.
Yeah, we'll remember that, you know, and we'll see, I mean, 1 year, one guy came in and appealed all 5 of his cars, and yeah, 1 year, some guy came in with his truck, and it turned out we had the wrong truck in our system, and it actually cost him money because he had all these other things on the vehicle, and he went like grumbling. So you never
Yeah,
know. You
Yeah,
never
they're,
know.
you never know what you can get. I
Okay,
remember
so,
someone said they use their truck for work. I said, well, explain, so I drive to work.
right. I know. All right, so
Should we adjourn? Does that have to be on the video?
we do have a motion to adjourn
So
at
moved.
7:58, I think. All right. End meeting.